For today's presentation, Diamond Bar High School's most beloved art teacher and all-around good guy, Mr. Huang.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And it's good to see so many familiar faces and new faces. You all are welcome. So I'm Mr. Huang. I'm one of the art teachers at Dunbar High School. And I have my fearless partner here, Rhoda DeZone. Thank you for also joining us. So it's our pleasure today. We have a very special treat for our visual art students at Dunbar High School, and also just people who are curious about just hearing a very unique story and a unique path towards a career that's really the foundation of passion and a lot of really good experiences along the way. So a little bit about the artist that we're talking about is his name is Andrew Freeman. Feel free to check out his Instagram. It's Andrew Freeman 27. And he is somebody that I've known since I was in elementary school. And he was always an amazing artist. And just growing up, I've always been just inspired by how talented he was. And then after losing touch for a little bit, we reconnected 3 years ago. And I was really happy to see him on a TV show, like a reality show called Face Off, where he was the season 12 winner of that reality show as the artist. And he is currently works in the special effects industry. He has a lot of great movie credentials under his name. He is the lead artist and sculptor and owner of Immortal Masks. And I'm just proud to call him my friend and just a great person to always connect with year after year, Mr. Andrew Freeman. Let's give him a great welcome, and Mr. Andrew Freeman.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for that introduction. That's very nice, man. I appreciate that. And, we go back so far. You know, it's a really a blessing to have you in my life all this time, and it's always a pleasure to come and do this. So, thank you, everybody, for having me.
All right, so I'm kind of like a host, but I think I'm doing my job really well when I'm not the one talking the most, because we're all here to hear you talk, because you have such a unique journey. And so if you could give us a little insight of your story, like how did you get here? Like, where did it all begin for you? How would you tell that story?
Well, I mean, I guess I've always had a passion for just art in general. I think it all started when I was a child, drawing dinosaurs. I think something about maybe dinosaurs is what maybe sparked the original, imagination and interest in maybe creatures and the fascination in art. And according to my parents, I was drawing dinosaurs and things like that at a very young age. And I guess the idea of these things that existed that we only have fossilized evidence of, that it was up to interpretation of what exactly it looked like. And I used to read dinosaur books and see different artists' interpretation, and I used to just kind of just come up with my idea of dinosaurs. And I think my parents were very supportive of seeing my interest in art. So for birthdays and Christmas, I was always receiving art presents and sketchbooks and canvases and things like that. So having supportive parents and seeing the passion was definitely a good thing for young me. And then as it evolved, I think when I was getting older, I started getting into comic books, and that's actually when I met Mr. Wong, and that's where we developed our friendship as children, reading Spawn comic books and things like that together, and coming up with our own comic book characters and studying anatomy. That's where, like, I guess learning anatomy and focusing on anatomy. That's where maybe I'd say we were maybe in like fourth or fifth grade when we started to kind of pay more attention to those things. And we were actually lucky enough to get a studio tour from a Disney animator. I think it was when we were like 12 years old or something like that. But he gave us a tour of the animation studios in Burbank, and they were at the time working on Legends of Mulan and Hunchback of Notre Dame and Hercules, and another film which was the Fantasia Continued, which was Fantasia Part Two essentially, but not too many people know about that one. But they were working on all these movies simultaneously, and there was a ton of artists there, and the creativity was just like electric. You know, you could like when you walk through that place, you could almost like just feel this energy, which is interesting because there is the energy in terms of the electric bill here and the water bill and the gas bill, which are different types of energy that we use. But the actual creative energy is a thing that exists, and in places where lots of creative things happen, I have to pay close attention to that, and I think that's a big part of certain places' success is paying attention and feeding that creative energy. Even though you can't pay the creative energy bill, there's a way to feed it. But getting back to the story, I think walking through Disney really inspired me to see a collaboration of artists coming together to make something that essentially was seamless, and it looked like it was all done by like one person essentially. So maybe that was like the introduction to how crazy things can get, like and actually walking through it and seeing it, and that also inspired me to maybe become an animator at the time, because all these films that I was discussing were essentially traditional animation, which are hand drawn frames every 24 seconds. So it was a very time consuming process. For a feature length film, it would be in excess of tens of thousands of drawings to depending on the length of the film. But it was at the time kind of a lucrative career for students right out of high school. So the animator that gave us the tour of the studios kind of gave me some advice that we should maybe learn some more anatomy. And he looked at my portfolio as a 12-year-old and honestly gave it a critique that was kind of like, I guess, in a way sad, but sweet. It was bittersweet, I guess. It was because he was honest, and he told me, "Wow, you're probably one of the better drawers or illustrators in your class, but your muscle guys look like they're balloon animals, and these things don't make sense, and you need to study anatomy. And if you take figure drawing classes, then your comic book characters will be more legible from an anatomical standpoint." So it was he was giving me some solid advice, and as much as I was probably told that I was one of the better artists in the class or the school, like he was basically telling me, you're not that good. In fact, this is what's wrong, and this is how to get better. And I did exactly that. I went and found the figure drawing classes, the anatomy classes that he said I was lacking in, and just started taking those classes. And anatomy, if I could give anyone listening some advice as an up and coming artist, it is anatomy is kind of like the key. It is the essential key to becoming an amazing artist. So it's like even goes back to the Renaissance days with Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci. Like those guys knew it, and they were so ahead of their time. And the reason it's key is because even if you wanted to become like a tattoo artist, if you know anatomy and someone comes to you and wants some tiny little thing, but it's a full head to toe figure on their neck or something, like you would be able to either as an artist identify it and talk them into something else, or be able to just pull it off because you have the confidence to and the skills of anatomy to know how to pull something off with minimal line work. And that even goes to being a cake artist. If you wanted to be like one of the craziest cake artists or chocolatiers, your knowledge of anatomy is going to make you be able to sculpt a hyper realistic human skull out of modeling chocolate, or laying fondant on top of something to create it to look like hyper realistic skin. So anatomy is definitely the key, and that's where as a young up and coming artist, I think things started kind of changing. And the animator was right. My drawings did become better. It was like kind of like leveling up. So, traditional drawing is always a good stepping board for learning anatomy, because there's figure drawing classes that exist for many people at community college level. So it's a good tool for any artist to use at any point in their career, even just to exercise and get better at things. But I'd say after getting pretty good at figure drawing and feeling pretty confident with becoming a entry level position animator right out of high school, that's when things actually changed. There was a shift in the industry, and the movie Toy Story had just recently come out, and all the traditional 24 drawings per second of animation changed to digital animation, where things were just a whole nother ballgame, and they were completely alien to what I had just learned and kind of prepared myself for. So, as a young, straight out of high school kid, a lot of the older animators that were kind of coaching me and preparing me for traditional animation, they were now kind of in a sense losing their jobs, and their advice to me as a young kid was, you're young, you should go and learn these animation programs, because this is going to be the future, and all the animation in the future is going to be digital, and it's going to be like this. And unfortunately, I didn't have, I looked into it, and at the time, those particular classes, which was early stage Maya and 3D Studio Max programs, were like extremely rare and expensive in certain places to get like a really solid education, to be studio ready, essentially. And I didn't really have the funds to do that, and that's I did have enough money left over that I had savings for school to spend some on taking figure drawing sculpting courses, which I loved figure drawing at that point so much that I started taking a sculpting version of figure drawing, where you basically sculpt the model in a very quick pose in a matter of an hour and a half or so. And through sculpting that course, the teacher was actually teaching at nighttime, kind of moonlighting, and during the day he was a special effects artist, and he was doing lots of sculpting for big movies that were coming out that he couldn't really talk about, but he would sneak me little pictures and things like that. And this was before camera phones and things like that. So he would bring his actual camera and have to put his little USB card in there and stuff like that. So, but he would show me pictures of things he was working on, or even bring in his portfolio and have just really inspiring work. And it kind of changed my direction. I guess at the time I kind of had a thing against computers. I was kind of like, oh, they kind of took away what potential I was going to have in the animation industry. So I wanted to go to something more raw and I guess connective with just my hands, and sculpting was just that. So I kind of fell in love with sculpture, and sculpting for me was almost taking drawing to the next level. It was almost like drawing with 3 dimensions. And where I draw or paint something and I can only see it from a singular 2 dimension flat surface, with clay I could look down on a sculpture or look directly up at it, or turn it at certain angles, 3/4 angles, and look up at it. And it kind of it forced me to focus more on honing in subtlety in anatomy, which in turn helped with the realism and things that I can achieve now. But yeah, essentially, I was able to use my sculpting skills to get into the makeup effects industry out here in Los Angeles, in some of the studios that do the practical work and makeup effects for makeups or puppets or props and things like that. And through working at some of these studios, I was able to be fortunate enough to meet my current business partner, George Frangidakis, who is kind of another pivotal moment in, I guess, the success of our company, which is essentially we were working at a place where we weren't too happy at. We both had opportunities to make some, you know, cool things, but for the most part, the owner of that particular company, you know, kind of held us back in a way. And you know, after he had left the company, shortly thereafter, I became unhappy and left the company, and kind of started focusing on some of the things that I had learned in the industry and advancing them in kind of a more, you know, product level item, which would be these masks, these high end kind of makeup effects, special effects masks. And it was something that I'd kind of started in my garage. And when, you know, both George and I were, you know, kind of at that place where we didn't want to work at that studio anymore, I asked him if he'd be interested in maybe, you know, taking a look at this, you know, idea and this kind of growing company that was kind of like becoming a thing. And he jumped on board, and you know, since that, the, you know, the success has just been, you know, kind of nonstop. And you know, the opportunities and the people that we get to work with, it's a really cool and fun job. And now it's become a thing where I get to go to work every day, and it's not, doesn't feel like work. It, you know, it's sometimes there's, you know, stressful things that have to be dealt with, but you know, when it's all said and done, you know, I'm kind of living my dream, because now I'm at a place where I can kind of create whatever I want, and in the medium that not only do I enjoy doing, but also utilizing some of the technology that's, you know, happening with 3D printing and 3D scanning, and kind of merging the two art forms, and kind of just exploring like the cusp of like what is to come. But it's all really exciting, and I have an amazing team, and yeah, I'm, you know, super fortunate and lucky to be here. And it's, you know, I guess if I if I have any advice for anyone listening to, you know, it would be, no matter what your pursuit is, you know, as a young person, even if there's a wrench thrown into the system, you know, like, never give up. Like, as long as you become really good at what you really want to be good at, like, the success will follow. You know, the time and passion that you put into something will eventually pay off if you never give up. You know, no matter how wild it may seem, you know, there's always the potential to get that goal, in my opinion, because I feel like I'm living proof of that. You know, I didn't go to a school to learn these things. I learned certain things that made me, you know, good at this, but I feel like, you know, the potential for, you know, anyone is there for anything, really.
Yeah, that's such a I love that story so much. And when you tell it, I always kind of get goosebumps thinking about like what really got you to this stage is just like you just never gave up on it. You just like you were so confident that your skill was going to be like undeniable, right? Like when you're really that good at something, like no matter what obstacles are in your way, like it's going to be overcome by the fact that you just kept going, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and now, and you know, I guess it's funny because masks, you know, like that's what I do now, and I guess that's what I'm known for, and like that's maybe what I'll be, you know, known for when I'm gone. Which I guess, you know, I never really thought of the art form of masks when I was a child, but like it was always kind of like there, and now it's even there. Like I mentioned, how, you know, Mr. Wong and I used to read Spawn comic books and draw, you know, our versions of these characters. Well, now, you know, like I've had the opportunity to actually work with, you know, Todd McFarlane and create the official licensed Spawn mask and the Violator mask. Like, you know, some of these like things that were like dreams of as a child, like they, you know, they almost come full circle, you know. But yeah, like it's I guess just they're, you know, the passion behind things, and never giving up. You know, even if, you know, something changes, it doesn't mean you have to abandon art in general. Maybe just find another way, or another thing that maybe you didn't think of before that it turns out to be even better in the long run. You know, and yeah, it's you know, life can change on you, I guess, you know, at any moment. But you know, in terms of your dreams, that's something that, you know, should never be abandoned.
Yeah, that's really great. And just the fact that how much the animation industry changed really shaped your new path. You weren't purposely trying to get into mask making. In a weird way, it kind of found you.
Well, it's interesting because yeah, the whole computer thing. It's the same thing. Like just as I started getting really good at sculpting, a lot of the practical effects houses out here started closing or minimizing staff because computer generated imagery was taking over. There's some things that they'll always use for makeup effects and things like that, but even in the sense of the stuff that I started, becoming more passionate at the time when I made the change, like animatronics and giant animatronic creatures led by human actors like the original Hellboy. There's a character called Mr. Wink that he fights as this giant troll thing with a metal fist. It's one of my favorite characters because of how far they're able to push the technology before it kind of overwhelmed everything. And at this point, the CGI is kind of abundant in the film industry, and it's getting good. So but I do know that there's a lot of projects happening right now that are still requiring makeup effects. So there's always going to need for, I think, in my opinion, a blending of the two things to make a more successful end product.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a lot of students here that are like they're sculpting right now. They're doing the skull sculpture that we did a couple of years back, and they're working on it, and they're just so inspired, and they would love to see some of your work too. I don't know if there's something that
Well,
you're.
yeah, like talking about the blend of CG and stuff like that, and even my past, I have like when I used to go and when I took the figure sculpting classes, we would have to begin the class by twisting up a wire skeleton essentially, and mounting it to a little baseboard, and then when the model would begin their pose, we would pose the corresponding little skeleton into the position and pose of the model, and then we would begin adding clay. And I recently did an experiment with our newly acquired 3D scanner and 3D printer, where I wanted to see if I could start blending the two techniques essentially, where I had something where I got the like a wire skeleton. This one has a little bit of clay on it already, but this is essentially like what we would start with in the class when I would start doing the figure sculpting, and it's maybe like about, I don't know, 8 inches or 9 inches tall, but I would add clay on that, and in that class we were paying attention to form and anatomy and things like that. Whereas what I did recently is I sculpted a maquette, which is basically like a small little like creature sculpture, or doesn't even necessarily have to be a creature, but just it's basically a small idea that you're eventually going to scale up to a larger size and make a larger version of. So when I say maquette, that's what that is. But I did one, and I'll take you over here where you can kind of see. This is a like a maquette right here of just like a little creature that I did, where he's got just like, I don't know, big eyes, and then this blue thing next to it is a 3D print where you can kind of see here. I'll kind of lower the light, where I was able to like scan this, and then in the digital realm, I went and added all this detail and like spikes and things like that and texture, and I was able to do all that in a matter of like days, like where typically if I wanted to make a character like that, we'd have to sculpt something, make a mold of that, and then from the mold, I would have to produce castings, and then paint those castings. Where right now with this technology, I can kind of sculpt something very quickly in a matter of hours, scan it, and then digitally, clean up and texture in a matter of hours, which would on that scale, a smaller scale, take much longer to do by hand. And then while I'm asleep, basically this machine is like, this robot is making my thing, and then I wake up in the morning and there it is, and now I basically just have to pull it off, clean up the supports, and wash any extra residue off of it, and then we can paint it or send it to a client as a finished version of this idea, this maquette. So it is definitely a cool tool that's evolving more and more, and the applications for 3D printing and scanning, it's starting to help even our company a lot more and more every day. So we're currently doing a project for a client that's in another country, and they can't come out here because of COVID reasons. But for now, like, we need to move forward on this project, and in order to get the information I need of this person's head in order to make a custom mask of their head, we're going to be able to 3D scan them in Sweden, where he's at, and then we can send me over this information, and then I'll be able to, do what I need to do with that, which is I'm going to have to resize some things, but I can basically do all that digitally, 3D print, that information, and in a matter of days, even probably quicker than what it would take to practically capture this person's likeness, I can do, digitally and quicker, and still we can still move forward with this project, even though there's even limitations in terms of travel and stuff like that. So yeah, it's pretty cool, where it's heading, and what's possible. But if you guys want, I can kind of show you something that we 3D scanned. It's for a company called Sideshow Collectibles, and we're gonna, I wonder if I can show you like a digital rendering. I'll go into my 3D print room and kind of show you some of the things that we're scanning and working on, and you guys can get like a quick tour of the shop while I do that, if that's cool.
Sounds amazing. So yeah, let's do a tour. Let's go ahead to the 3D print room.
All right, so this is the sculpting office, where I sculpt. Well, it's kind of quiet in here right now. This is a sculpture I'm working on right now, where it's kind of like a zombie werewolf type thing, but it's kind of coming along. There's still a lot that needs to be done there. This is like the oven that I kind of heat the clay up in, so the clay's warm when I apply it. And then we'll head over here. There's and here's like the drawing room, where I do a lot of my drawings, and you can see there's some Spawn stuff in here and some other things that are kind of from my childhood that inspired me and that still inspire me today. Um, this is a sculpture that I was going to show you that we were able to 3D scan this. So when we go into the digital room, I'll kind of show you what this character evolves into, or is it going to eventually evolve into. But you can kind of see those slots in the back of her head. We're going to be digitally creating some kind of metal plates that go in there. But now we'll kind of head out into the shop, and it's going to get noisy, so I'll just kind of walk around and show you guys. But this is just a bunch of inventory of like masks. It's like lots of masks. And then over here, we're doing some like bodysuits, this is pretty cool. Like I don't know if you guys can see this, but these are like these like muscle suits that we've been doing, where we've got like a couple different ones here. You might recognize some of these guys. But yeah, like this is let me see if I can pull this down. It's kind of hard, I guess, with one hand, but you can kind of see like it's just like a big muscle suit that we've been able to use. There's like a 12-foot skeleton. We've been able to use this new material called somafoam. There's my wife, Michelle. And she's like a co-owner of Immortal, my business partner, and also my wife. And now we're heading. This is the silicone. This is where it's gonna get noisy. Here you can see. All right, and now we're in the 3D print room, and then here's some of the things that we've 3D printed, and then and some of these things are actually from friends of ours that they've sculpted as well. But you can see a larger version of the maquette guy like there now. That was that thing we saw earlier. And then this is the 3D printer that we use right now. And then let's see if we can come over here. I can kind of show you. Do you mind holding this? This is like a digital version of that thing that we were just looking at. And you can kind of see those blades that I was talking about that are a different color here.
Is this program right here ZBrush?
Yeah, this is ZBrush.
Okay. That's really cool. How what was the learning curve for you doing ZBrush? Did you pick it? Did it make sense right away, or did it take some time to kind of get used to it?
Well, that's a good question because, at first it was really discouraging when I was just using a mouse and I kind of like was, playing around with it. And it was interesting because it is like a sculpting, drawing hybrid type thing. But it wasn't until I got this Wacom and the pen that goes with it that I was able to like really merge the actual emphasis on the drawing part of it because like with all the figure drawing and the drawing, when we were kids and stuff like that, I'm definitely more when it comes to the computer and the flat screen and working on it. It was more of trying to figure out how to, I guess, make it work for me so that I could essentially like I don't know get through that learning curve a little bit quicker. And I think that was definitely the key was investing into this this program and this particular computer. But yeah, it's cool because now with the technology we were able to scan the sculpture and then digitally we sculpted these plates, and then the next step is we're gonna import them into a program that we then can 3D print it. So again, like while we're all asleep, this thing will be printing all those, and then we wake up and we'll have work to do by cleaning it up, and then we'll make a mold of these things, and then we'll be able to run them in a very lightweight, kind of like urethane foam, so that it'll capture all the detail. I don't know if you guys were able to see the detail, but there's lots of little like cracks and bony protrusions and things like that. So if we're able to capture that, in this self-skinning urethane, then essentially the mask will be much more lightweight than how it's going to look. So there's always, creating the thing to make it as cool as can look and as cool as can be. But then there's also, the functionality behind it and making sure that someone can kind of, wear it comfortably for at least a couple hours or, maybe longer, depending on, how much we're able to push things and keep their comfortability in mind. But it's kind of like with anything, I guess it's, I think a strong, artistic sensibility is always to maybe have, form, always in front of function, that way, I tend to, always put importance of the form, so to make sure that it looks right. Cause at the end of the day, no matter what I'm doing, even if it's someone asking me to just, draw a picture for their kid or something, I still want it to be really good. And I think, as an artist and having that integrity, it's always important, and maybe in order to always stay strong as an artist, maybe, even if you're doing something that's got a strong functionality, make sure you put the importance of form on it. And that's because that's where your style is going to come from. And it's important for, everyone to establish that style, in some way or shape.
That's awesome. I didn't know if there was anything more in the studio that you wanted to show us, but is this a good time for a Q&A?
Sure. Yeah. It was. I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts out there. Like some of the painters are wrapping up the day, and then some of the other employees are kind of right in the middle of it. But it was kind of just a quick quick view of the silicone machine and all the things that happen there, I guess.
Okay, thank you. That was an awesome tour. That was very, very cool. Thank you for sharing that with